Hello and good evening. Right, now, visitors. I've been inundated with visitors, which has been lovely but very exhausting, so that's why I haven't been able to put up videos over the past few days. Now, I've got more than one request for the name and make and model of the camera. I don't like advertising, but I'm going to put this up because people are genuinely interested. And it's a Canon PowerShot SX420IS. It is a rather good little camera, and I could partly pay for it through the sale of some of my books. So it's been a good investment in terms of being able to recreate on screen what I regard as the beauty of Bealtaine Cottage, the beauty of Mother Earth. So there's been a lot of changes here just over the past, a few days since I last made a video. So you can see some of the density. And there's also the beginnings of flowers up there on the clematis, just above the kitchen window. I'll just zoom in. So you can see some of those flowers beginning to show through. They're absolutely gorgeous. Now that clematis is only about 3 years old, and it's also spreading up onto the roof of the porch, so you can see up there as well some lovely blooms. And then as I was showing people around today, I noticed just down here, now you know that I planted up these little beds either side of the front door, because you know me, I'm just going to keep planting. I'm going to keep planting until people have to shuffle in here past trees. There will be a point at which cars won't be able to get in. Anyway, I noticed, look at this, it's a tiny little Katonah Aster plant. So that's grown from a seed, which is dropped from this very, very young Katonah Aster that I grew from seed. You can see it's planted in there with the birch. Now the plant on either side of the door, you have birch, Katonah Aster, birch. And if anyone feels that this is too close to the house, well, it's actually quite simple. The porch is wooden, so it's actually quite a distance away from the house, number one. Number two, there's only a very shallow sort of a foundation just to support the wooden porch. I consider trees to be more important than buildings, and I'm quite sure that in the course of my lifetime that's not going to present a problem. Yeah, I know some people may find that a little bit odd, you know, that I can take such a laissez-faire attitude towards buildings. But quite frankly, buildings come and buildings go. And I feel pretty confident about planting this close to the cottage, because I lived for a very long time in England, and I became quite au fait with some of the beautiful old cottages in the home counties around London, where you had this exquisite planting, I mean just incredible planting of trees and shrubs and bushes and climbers right up close to the houses. And in fact, if you look at some of the old Elizabethan houses, you'll see that very much in evidence. And the plants don't seem to do any damage to the homes. I think it's only where you have something like you know, an oak tree or something planted close that can cause a problem. And in fact, the only time I've seen a problem with planting too close to a house is in the case of an oak tree. And that was back in 1976 when there was a massive drought on in the southeast of England, particularly London. And London, of course, is built on clay. And what happened was the trees and whatever other vegetation there was in London obviously were the first callers on that water within the clay. And so as they drew the water out from the clay then sort of compressed, you know, became more dense, and so began to crack open. And buildings built upon London clay then began to subside. But that wasn't necessarily the fault of plants. But oak trees, in this particular instance, there was an oak tree very, very close to somewhere that I lived, and it did affect the building. But I mean, an oak tree is very different from a birch. A birch tree or a shrub has got a very limited lifespan, number one. The roots are not as powerful as the oaks. So, I mean, you know, you really have to use common sense when it comes to these issues. But generally I love to see anything planted really close to homes because I think it sort of embraces them and frames them and creates a beautiful ambience around the building. So I'm all for it. And to be honest, I couldn't give two hoots about the building. If a crack appears in a cottage, I think I just fill it with cement or something, you know. Because a cottage is just a single-storey building. It's not something you have to. Well, I think it's not something you have to get too concerned about. So, just walking around the building now to see all the various beautiful plants and the flowers that are opening and the flowers that are about to open. You can see there on the side wall of the barn, the north wall of the barn, the quince has opened beautifully, and in with that quince there is a beautiful fern, and there's some Crocosmia montbretia, and it's all held in place by three quite old and decaying now logs. And then along here again there's the ferns coming out. There's the beautiful valerian, which is not, by the way, the Herbvalerian. This is just the floral valerian. And you've got the oxeye daisies, look at this. Their little flowers are forming. And the aquilegia, Granny's bonnet, that's going to be opening soon. You've got the remains of the beautiful cowslips, and they are beginning to seed. So I'm just going to let them seed because I really want lots of cowslip seeds. You've got a beautiful big cascade of wild primroses in there. Absolutely lovely. I'm delighted with that. So of course there's going to be lots and lots of seed coming from that one plant. And more ferns opening up. These little sedums here in this old tin can. Look at that. Aren't they lovely? So we're going to have flowers on those as well. Get lovely pink flowers on those. So you can see over there on the other rustic beds there's lots of aquilegia and growing tall now, and that'll be flowering. And just here at the front, the beautiful orange and red euphorbia is flowering, and that just keeps growing. It ends up looking like a massive shrub and stays in place for the whole summer and autumn. And I'm just looking down through the trees, and what do I see? This is incredible because this is the very first year this has happened. My baby horse chestnut tree is having babies. She's grown up. Look, let me just put my glasses on and I'll zoom in. This is so exciting, so exciting. Look at this. Look at the flowers on the horse chestnut. Oh my word. There's lots and lots of teenage mothers in this garden, and they're all very welcome. Look at them all. Thriving, thriving. And here we have the sedge, which is in full flower. This can be known as foxtail. And look at the pollen coming off there. Isn't that beautiful? This is a lovely way to teach children about pollen. And in fact, there was a couple of children here yesterday that I was able just to do this with, and they thought it was just mesmerising. And I was explaining how all this works. So that's beautiful, just beautiful. More euphorbia down here. I did actually spread some little bits of it, and I must remember to do that a little bit more generously this autumn. So the Kansan cherry, of course, is just divine. Look at this. I mean, this is food for the soul, you see. You've got to have food for the birds, food for the bees, food for the butterflies, food for me. And then you have to have food for the soul. And of course I believe that every living sentient being has a soul. And that includes Mother Earth. And this is beauty, beauty for the soul. So we'll just walk around here, and this is now a lot of people admire this little plant because they don't recognise it as a tree, you see. Because what I did, this was a little a little pole pine. And I didn't want it to compete with this beautiful green beech. So what I did, I cut the leader out, and you can see there's lots and lots of individual stems coming from that. And so then I sort of continued to shape it. So I sort of treat it a bit like a garden bonsai. And of course here, look, the babies are happening. Now, these aren't ready just yet, but these open up in much the same way as the sedge, and you get these beautiful billowing clouds of sort of looks like smoke coming out from there. That'll be happening in another wee while. Come on, Jack, we're just going round the back. Happy boy, my happy boy. So now I've been washing the car today. Look, there's the bucket and the brush. So in here I want to show you, first of all, I think I showed you this before. Look at all the, I don't know if it's parsley or coriander coming up in there, but anyway, I didn't plant it. So everything's greening up well here in the veranda. But just over here, now the roses would normally be out at this time of year, but you know we're running a wee bit late. And sure, what odds, it's no big deal. So look at all these beautiful buds, and they're going to break out. And when they break out, it's party time. Party time, big time. Because it's just a sea of pink. Now come on, Jack, we'll go around this way. And I also want to show you the fig tree, because the fig tree is beginning to have lots of fruit on it. Can you see the fruit there on the fig? Going to have lots and lots of figs. It looks as though it's going to be one of the best years for figs ever, and I thought last year was. Lots of these absolutely exquisite when they open, pink, sort of papery pink perennial poppies. That's all coming up beautifully. More sedge in another little tin. You see, how's that for recycling? Got some flowers on the little magnolia there. I think I'll plant that out this year. Take it out of the pot. And round here, absolutely masses of beautiful clematis flowers. Now there's two clematis planted in here, and I know this one is the clematis montana because that really is very hardy and very sturdy and just grows and flowers and couldn't give two hoots the way it goes. This one here, it's a little bit more of a hybrid, I think, but the flowers are beautiful. But it's a little bit more delicate, you know. But I've got some new stems growing, so I'm very optimistic about that. And there's a rose there on the other side. And I've just noticed there's a few little rose buds. Because again, this is going to be the first year for these. So that's quite delightful. And then we'll walk down around the side of the cottage. Now, what am I looking at now? I'm just sort of casting my glance around to see what's coming up. And of course there's been some really good growth against this wall. We've got Katonah Aster, Valerian, variegated ivy, oxeye daisy. And then just here in the corner, I'm pretty pleased with this little buddleia, because that just is growing in gravel really with a tiny little bit of compost. So that's really good to see. But also here, just on the corner of the cottage, this is called, elephant grass. It looks a little bit like bamboo, but it dies back each year. Now there appears to be a spreading outwards of that, which again I'm pleased about. And I did put this little cutting of fuchsia in, and it seems to have done really well. So I think we're going to have some flowers on the fuchsia, and it's there beside the acrolegia. So there we go. That's just a little tour around the cottage. There's another little birch tree, look, growing in there. So that's just perfect because that's far enough away from the building. And even though it's growing sort of in gravel, it should grow pretty well. Because birch trees are what are called pioneer trees, and they will pioneer spaces that are not really fertile enough for other plants and trees, and kind of prepare the ground, you know, through a series of, you know, leaf drop and decaying wood, etc., over the course of time, of course. And they're beautiful pioneer trees, much in the same way as willow is a pioneer tree. And of course goat willow, as I've explained in other videos, is a wonderful pioneer tree. Now there's something rather attractive about that little bit of box growing in that terracotta pot underneath the window. I don't quite know what it is. Maybe it reminds me of warm, dry climates. Don't know, but it works anyway, it works. So there we go. There we go. I can just see the beautiful yellow flowers of the carrier out there as well. Let me just zoom in on that. Isn't that beautiful? That's called carrier. Kerria. And the red stuff beside it is actually the new leaves on the Photinia. I think that one of the generic names is red robin. And lots and lots of babies up there. Let me just pull the camera back. Lots and lots of babies on the field maple. Although I haven't actually seen any field maple seedlings or saplings. So I must read up about this and see. Perhaps it needs to have another tree nearby, you know, where the cross-pollination can take place. Anyway, I shall investigate that. So there we go. I can go in and put my feet up at last. Have a blessed evening, everybody, and blessings to you all. Oh, and underneath this video there's a subscribe button. It would be wonderful if you did. And also underneath this video there's a little bit of blurb, and there's links to, if you want to purchase one of my books. The books that are currently out there, A Cottage in 3 Acres, which is all about the beginnings of Bealtaine, the beginnings of the Bealtaine project, from day one, and my journey here and through the past. I wrote it on the 13th year. There's also another book, In Search of the Goddess Rising, because as many of you know, I'm very interested in the divine feminine, and I'm very interested in the goddess. I'm very interested as a woman in the feminine energies, and there's a little bit of history in there as well. There's another little book, which of course is the Bealtaine Cottage Guide to the Deep Midwinter. There's some nice little recipes in that book, and it's very much a book for Yuletide. And the 4th item for sale on the website is the Magical Mythical Map of Bealtaine Cottage, and that's a beautifully drawn map, printed on 2 sides, printed on both sides, and it's drawn by whom I consider a very, very talented and fine artist, David Gascoigne, and it's beautiful. And I know that Christy Nicol, who has a lovely YouTube site, Christy's down in Australia, she was one of the first people to send me a photograph of the magical mythical map of Bealtaine Cottage coloured in, that she coloured in, and it's just beautiful, wonderful. So that's it now. From the moving upwards, from ascending up towards Midsummer here at Bealtaine Cottage, and yes, I'm still on my juice fast. This is day 57, and from the beautiful damp and dark recesses of the incredibly vibrant woodland here at Bealtaine Cottage, woodland and food forest, I wish you all a blessed evening or a blessed morning wherever you are.